What is up, A Push people? So today's video, today's video lesson is going to wrap up our chapter 13, a study on the Union imperiled. So we are talking about the lead up to the Civil War, the big war between the North and the South in this country. And today, our last topic is actually the road to secession, which started the Civil War. So we are going to dig into that in the textbook right now. So the road to secession. Outside Illinois, the Republicans did well in the congressional elections in 1858, which alarmed many Southerners. They worried not only about the anti-slavery plank in the Republicans' program, but also about the party's economic program, which favored the interest of Northern industrialists at the expense of the South. The higher tariffs pledged in the Republican platform could only help Northern business and hurt the South's dependence on the export of cotton. Therefore, Southerners feared that a Republican victory in 1860 would spell disaster for their economic interest and also threaten their constitutionality right, as affirmed by the Supreme Court, to hold slaves in slavery as property. If this were not enough cause for alarm, Northern radicals provided money to John Brown, the man who had massacred 5 farmers in Kansas in 1856. So let's see why. John Brown confirmed the South's worst fears of radical abolitionism when he tried to start a slave uprising in Virginia. In October 1859, he led a small band of followers, including his 4 sons and some former slaves, in an attack on the Federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry. His impractical plan was to use guns from the arsenal to arm Virginia slaves, whom he expected to rise up in general revolt. Federal troops under the command of Robert E. Lee captured Brown and his band after a 2-day siege. Brown and 6 of his followers were tried for treason, convicted, and hanged in Virginia as part of that process. So this, the abolitionist of the North was happy that this happened, but the South used it as a fear-mongering tactic to fuel anger in the South. Moderates in the North, including Republican leaders, condemned Brown's use of violence, but Southerners were not convinced of their words. Southern whites saw the raid as final proof of the North's true intention to use slave revolts to destroy the South. Because John Brown spoke with simple eloquence at his trial of his humanitarian motives in wanting to free the slaves, he was hailed as a martyr by many anti-slavery Northerners. To prove this point even further, a few years later, when Civil War broke out, John Brown were celebrated by advocating Northern armies, singing "Glory, glory, hallelujah, his soul is marching on." So this fuel that John Brown gave. So, let's backtrack a little to the Lincoln-Douglas debates, because we are going to be talking about the election of 1860. But before then, I want to get you caught up on the Lincoln-Douglas debates before the election. So we are backtracking. In 1858, the focus of the nation was on Stephen Douglas's campaign for re-election as senator from Illinois. Challenging him for the Senate seat was a successful trial lawyer and former member of the Illinois legislature, Abraham Lincoln. The Republican candidate had served only one 2-year term in Congress in the 1840s as a Whig. Nationally, he was an unknown compared to Douglas, the little giant, the champion of popular sovereignty. So this is where we heard his name before. He was a champion of popular sovereignty. He was, yeah. So these were a debate between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. Lincoln was not an abolitionist. Even so, as a moderate who was against the expansion of slavery, he spoke of it being ethically wrong. Quoting, "If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong." That was the stance he put on it. Accepting the Illinois Republicans' nomination, the candidate delivered his celebrated House Divided speech that won him fame. "This government," said Lincoln, "cannot endure permanently half slave and half free," because that's where we were going. A statement that made Southerners view Lincoln as a radical. In 7 campaign debates held in different Illinois towns, Lincoln shared the platform with his famous opponent, Douglas. The Republican challenger attacked Douglas's seeming indifference to slavery as a moral issue. So Abraham Lincoln was attacking slavery on a pure moral level, and he was attacking Douglas for not seeing that slavery was a moral issue. And that is what got many Southerners angry and anxious enough to succeed, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. In a debate in Freeport, Illinois, Lincoln challenged Douglas to reconcile popular sovereignty with the Dred Scott decision. In what became known as the Freeport Doctrine, Douglas responded that slavery could not exist in a community if the local citizens did not pass laws, slave codes, maintaining it. So this popular sovereignty campaign. His views angered Southern Democrats because from their point of view, Douglas did not go far enough in supporting the implications of the Dred Scott decision. Douglas won his campaign for re-election to the U.S. Senate. In the long run, however, he lost ground in his own party by alienating Southern Democrats because he did not go far in the whole Dred Scott decision. Lincoln, on the other hand, emerged from the debates as a national figure and a leading contender for the Republican nomination for president in 1860. So let's go over the election of 1860. First, we see the breakup of the Democratic Party. As 1860 began, the Democratic Party represented the last practical hope for coalition and compromise. The Democrats held their national nominating convention in Charleston, South Carolina. Stephen Douglas was the party's leading candidate and the person most capable of winning the presidency. However, his nomination was blocked by a combination of angry Southerners and supporters of President Buchanan because alienating Southern Democrats. After deadlocking at Charleston, the Democrats held a second convention in Baltimore. Many delegates from the slave states walked out, enabling the remaining delegates to nominate Douglas on a platform of popular sovereignty and enforcement of the fugitive slave law. Southern Democrats then held their own convention in Baltimore and nominated President John C. Breckinridge of Kentucky as their candidate. So we see this natural split in the Democratic Party, which in my opinion led Abraham Lincoln to be elected. When the Republicans met in Chicago, they enjoyed the prospect of an easy win over the divided Democrats. See, they made the most of their advantage. They made the most of their advantage by drafting a platform that appealed strongly to the economic self-interest of Northerners and Westerners. In addition to calling for the exclusion of slavery from the territories, the Republican platform promised a protective tariff for industry, free land for homesteaders, and internal improvements to encourage Western settlements, including a railroad to the Pacific. To ensure victory, the Republicans turned away from Senator William S. Seward, a well-known leader but more radical on slavery, to a strong debater from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln. One cloud on the horizon darkened the Republicans' otherwise bright future. In the South, secessioners warned that if Lincoln was elected president, they would succeed. Well, we already know the election results, but let's cover them anyways. While Douglas campaigned across the country, Lincoln confidently remained at home in Springfield, Illinois, meeting with Republican leaders and giving statements to the press. The election results were predictable. Lincoln carried every one of the free states of the North, which represented a solid majority of 59% of the electoral votes. He won only 39.8% of the popular vote, however, and would therefore be a minority president. So Lincoln won easily. Factors to consider here. Lincoln won easily because he ran on the platform that slavery was bad morally, and the South already said if Lincoln won the presidency, that's it, we're succeeding. Because of John Brown, of increasing animosity towards the South from the North. So secession was bound to happen. The Republicans controlled neither the Congress nor the Supreme Court. Even so, the election of Lincoln was all that Southern secessionists needed to call for immediate disunion. In December 1860, a special convention in South Carolina voted unanimously to secede. Within the next 6 weeks, other state conventions in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas did the same. In February 1861, representatives of the 7 states of the Deep South met in Montgomery, Alabama, and created the Confederate States of America. The Constitution of this would-be Southern nation was similar to the U.S. Constitution, except that the Confederacy placed limits on the government's power to impose tariffs and restrict slavery. Elected president and vice president of the Confederacy were Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi and Alexander Stephens of Georgia. So we see this succession happen, right? And how are we gonna react to it? One more compromise, and then I'll leave you with a few thoughts. A lame duck president, a leader completing a term after someone else has been elected to his or her office. Buchanan had 5 months in office before President-elect Lincoln was due to succeed him. Buchanan was a conservative who did nothing to prevent the secession of the 7 states. Congress was more active. In a last-ditch effort to appease the South, Senator John Crittenden proposed a constitutional amendment that would guarantee the right to hold slaves in all territories south of 3630, the famous line. Lincoln, however, said that he could not accept this compromise because it violated the Republican position against extension of slavery into the territories. The Southern whites who voted for secession believed they were acting in the tradition of the Revolution of 1776. They argued that they had a right to national independence and to dissolve a constitutionality compact that no longer protected them from tyranny, from northern rule. Many of them also thought that Lincoln, like Buchanan, might permit secession without a fight. Those who thought that had badly miscalculated. So a few thoughts before we end the chapter and go to chapter 14 is 7 states have succeeded, right? We're about to go into war, fighting the North versus the South on a moral issue. The Civil War was about slavery. It was also about some other things like states' rights, secession, and other stuff like that. So I cannot wait to start chapter 14 with you guys in the next video.